In this video we're going to talk about HTML5, the basics of HTML, what an HTML element is, and how the browser renders HTML elements. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create a text file. So I'm just going to open up a terminal and I'm just going to create the file on my desktop here. So we'll cd onto the desktop, change directories, ls-al, we see what's on here. I can use the tree command to see what's inside here. This is all good. I want to create a file, so I can do that with the touch command, and I want to call it, say, cat.html, because as we all know, the internet is for cats. Alright, cat.html. Now so far I've just created the file and there's no text inside of it. ls cat.html, cat.html. There's nothing inside. Alright. I can add stuff to this file, cat.html. So the nano command is the text-based editor, and I can edit this file. And we can start with just plain text. And we can say this is going to be a web page about Mr. Mittens. Alright, and Control S will save that, and I can double click on this and it should open up in my web browser. Now I don't have anything particularly special about this text file other than it's called an HTML file. I don't really have any code in here per se, but the browser is very forgiving. It doesn't require you to have all of the exact specifications for an HTML document. It's going to try to do its best to render whatever you type in that document, right? So that way if you have one tiny mistake, it's okay. It's still going to try to render it. So this isn't actually official HTML yet, but the browser is being nice. It's being kind to us and saying, we know what you're trying to do. This isn't official HTML, but we'll go ahead and render it for you anyway. Right? So in this file, cat.html, I might want to mention some things about my cat. Right? So I can say, Mr. Mittens is a great cat. He is very grumpy sometimes. He loves to chase his tail. Alright, and if you don't know how to copy and paste in the terminal, it's really important to know how to do that. On Linux terminals, to copy from the terminal is Control-Shift-C, and to paste is Control-Shift-V. So I'm going to paste this a few times so it's as if I have a paragraph of information. Right? And we'll make sure that this is all continuous, no new lines. Yeah, there we go. Alright, and this is just to simulate a bunch of text that we have. So notice we have Mr. Mittens at the top, that's kind of the title of our page, and then we have a bunch of text about him. Right? So we save this file and I can reload this in the browser. But notice what happens in the browser. We have our original Mr. Mittens up here, and even though in our file we had some new lines, those have gone, those have vanished. Alright? So whenever the browser is reading an HTML file, any white space it encounters, any amount of white space, so white space is plain spaces, tabs, new line characters, carriage returns, anything like that, any number of those that it encounters, it collapses down into one single white space. So here, up at the top, we have two new line characters, and instead of rendering with two new line characters, it collapses that all into one single space there. Alright? So this makes it difficult if I wanted to say, copy all of this and make a second paragraph. And I could label this other info. And then I want to paste this. So this is more information about Mr. Mittens. I save this, and if I render this, it just smashes it all together, right? The reason is because HTML uses different tags, the idea of HTML elements, to render elements in certain ways, to render text, to render sections of documents. Okay. So the structure we have here in this text document is kind of, we have this heading here, right, and then we have a paragraph of text, and then we have a subheading, right, and then a paragraph of text. So in HTML, to get the browser to render this in the way we would see fit, we're going to have to use an H1 tag. Okay, you have an opening H1 tag that stands for heading 1, and then a closing H1 tag. All right, so this is the structure of what's called an HTML element. You have the less than symbol, the tag name, and then you might have attributes inside of here, and then the closing, the greater than symbol, right? And then you have the content of the element. And then you have what's called a closing tag. The closing tag looks just like the opening tag, except there's a slash in front of the tag name when you close it. All right? So this is an HTML element. So what this one does, the H1 element makes this very large and bold, and it also generates a new line. So it's going to push all of this down below. If we save this and refresh our document, now we see Mr. Mittens is in bold, and it's also forced the other text away from this heading. It's now underneath, right? So we still have an issue here. Let's say we have a couple paragraphs on Mr. Mittens. Let's scroll down a little bit, make this window a little bit bigger. So we're going to have a couple paragraphs on Mr. Mittens underneath the initial heading 1. And we'll paste that. So we've got 2 paragraphs there. Then we have this other info section. So let's say this other info is a heading, but it's not quite the heading of the entire document, right? Most cases you have one H1 heading in a document. That's what the whole document is about. So this might be an H2. Okay, so that's heading size 2. And you create the H2 closing tag. So remember, the content is in the middle. You have the tag name, and this is the opening tag. And you can have additional attributes and information inside the opening tag. And then the closing tag is just the tag name in angle brackets with a slash in front of the tag name. Okay, so opening tag, closing tag. Now if we save this, refresh, okay, now this is looking a little bit better. We have a heading. We have 2 paragraphs here, but they're mashed together, so we need to kind of fix that. But we have a little bit more semblance of an organized document here. And that's really what HTML does. It structures your data. That's what it's supposed to do. All right. Now what we want to do is add a little structure to this data here. We want to make these 2 separate paragraphs, so there's actually an HTML tag for that. It's called the P tag for paragraph /P. So what's inside of the opening tag, between the opening tag and the ending tag, is called the content. And in this case we just have text content, but you could also have other HTML content. So in this case we're going to have another P tag and then a closing P tag. Right? And we'll go ahead and do this down here as well. P tag and a closing P tag. Alright, and we save this. And now we see this has separated. The browser has rendered this differently. Even though the content is the same, we added these tags, and the browser changes the way it structures the output of this document. Okay? So one important thing to notice is if we go to the settings of whatever browser we're using, somewhere there's going to be something called Developer Tools. Okay, so I'm using the Chrome browser here. We go to More Tools, Developer Tools. There's a shortcut for that, Control-Shift-I. We're going to be using that a lot. Okay, so we can go ahead and open the Developer Tools, and we can see some interesting stuff. If we go to Elements up here at the top, this is our HTML document. As we highlight each one of these elements we've created, it highlights it in the viewing window. So this is the contents of that first paragraph tag, the P tag, and then the second one. And here is our second heading, right? H2, and then another paragraph tag. Okay? Now you see the browser was kind to us and actually made this more of an official HTML document. We left this stuff off. We're going to go into everything it takes to make an official HTML5 document later, but we're just starting out with the content so you get familiar with what it means, what an HTML element is and how it behaves. Okay, so we've got the H2 headings, and there's actually 6 different headings. So H1 through H6. So we can say H1 heading 1, /h1. All right, and what happens if I want to actually add a less than symbol or a greater than symbol in my text, right? Because here I can't do that. If I actually wanted this less than symbol in there, if I refresh the page, it just shows heading, right? If I actually want that in the displayable content, I have to use an escape character, an HTML escape character, an escape sequence actually. So in HTML, that starts with the ampersand, all right, and then LT for less than, semicolon, all right, and then I could say /h1, and then again ampersand, which is the escape character, and then greater than GT, semicolon. So these characters, these 4 characters, are actually just going to generate in the output a greater than sign, and then these 4 characters are going, or I'm sorry, a less than sign, and these 4 characters are going to generate a greater than sign. So now I can actually have what looks like a closing h1 tag here, and actually we want to get rid of that slash, so this will just be an h1 opening tag. So if we save this, so that's, we now see the greater than, or the less than and the greater than symbols. So now it looks like an h1 tag. All right, and we might want to add a closing tag here, so we would do ampersand, less than, and then /h1, and then ampersand, ampersand greater than, like that. So we refresh that. So this is a heading 1. It's an h1 tag. And let's go ahead and make all of the different headings. There's 6 of them, as I said. So in Nano, Control K deletes a line or copies a line, and Control U, you can paste it multiple times. So we need 6 of these. And we're going to change this H2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then finally here. All right, we save this and refresh, and we see all of the different heading sizes. So generally, as I said, an HTML document will have, it could have one heading, heading 1. Normally there would just be one of those, and then you would have heading 2s. You might have multiple heading 2s, and within a heading 2 have a heading 3. But this allows us to structure our document in an organized way. Right? These are optional tags. You don't have to use them, but they are common when making simple HTML pages. Right? So that's an example of the different headings. So something we might also want to add is an image of our cat. Right? We want to let people know what Mr. Mittens looks like. So we're going to use an image tag, img. Okay, and this is the opening tag, right? Image tags are what's called a void element. They actually don't have any child content allowed. So void elements, you do not need to close them. So you would not have a /img, right? Because there is no content it can have in between it. All right, so you just have the image tag, but it does have an attribute, src, which is the source. So we need to put in this src attribute the source, either a URL to an image on another web server, or a path to an image on our web server. Okay, and this path is just like Linux paths that you would think of. So basically, I want to create cat.jpg. I want some file named cat.jpg on my CS server, okay, wherever I'm hosting this document. So if this document is on the Indiana State University CS department HTML folder for a particular user, then it's going to expect this cat.jpg to be in the same folder. All right, so if I refresh this page, right now it's just on my desktop, and I have this image, this is what a broken image link looks like. they can't find the cat.jpg, so we're going to have to look for one. So a common way to do that is just Google search for funny cat or something, right? And we want to also say file type colon, and we want to look for JPEG images. Okay, so this is the file type, and we'll look for images. There we go, file type colon JPEG. And just pick one of these. You click on it and click on the link to it. And this is a YouTube. We want images, JPEG files. And find one that works. Okay, so if we right click on this, whatever the image is, you can save image as or open image in new tab. So we'll open image in new tab, and you get some web server somewhere on the internet is serving this file, right? And notice it's got a .jpeg extension. Okay, so that's correct. That's what we're looking for. Or we can just download this file, and we can save this image as, and we'll save it to our desktop, and we're going to save it as cat.jpg. Oh, not search for it. Cat.jpg. There we go. So now we have cat.jpg here on our desktop, right? We open that up. That's the correct image. All right. So now if I refresh this, we now see the link is no longer broken because my img tag, my image tag, has a source attribute. That's the name of the attribute, src, and then you have an equal sign, and then you have the value of that attribute. Okay, so it's attribute, name, equal sign, and then attribute value. Almost universally, there are exceptions, but for the most part, you're going to want to put quotes around all attribute values. We can look in the official HTML specification for when you can do that, but in most cases, it's just a good habit to get into to use quotes around all of them. All right. So here we see the source cat.jpg. This is the path to the file that this HTML document should look for. Right? The assumption is it's relative to what this HTML file, to the path that this HTML file is located in. So this HTML file is located on my desktop, so it's going to look on the desktop for cat.jpg. I could also create a folder called cats and then move cat.jpg in there. If I refresh this page, we now have a broken image link again, but then I can change this to cats/cat.jpg and then refresh. Okay, and whatever the path is to that image, you just specify it here. Additionally, if I want to make another image, but I don't actually want to have the image on my server, I don't want to host the image, I want someone else to host it, I can copy this image tag, or I'll just make a new one, right? It's good practice to make the tags again. img is the name of the tag. We're going to specify the source attribute, src. Remember, double quotes for the value, right? And then we're going to close this. And since image tag is a void element, you don't technically have to close it. This is what's called a self-closing tag. Technically, you don't have to close it in HTML, but I like to. It's a good habit because XHTML or XML, you always have to close your elements. So I'm in the habit of always closing them. It's fine, but you don't necessarily have to. So if you see me, this is what's called a self-closing tag. This tag has no content, so it has no closing tag. So just the open tag itself can include a slash, which tells you that the tag closes as well. All right. So you'll see me do this on some elements that don't necessarily require it. It's just a habit from XML, which XML has had its influence on HTML. It's not quite the same thing. So anyway, we have the second image tag, and I'm going to have another image of this cat here. But instead of using the image on our local server, I could use this URL here. Someone else is hosting this on some other web server, and I can just paste that in here. So this is the URL, HTTPS, at the entire URL of this cat image. Alright, we save that. If I refresh the page, now we should see two images. Now this one was the one that we hosted on the server, and this one is the one that we got from someone else's hosting. And notice as I move the width of this page, notice the flow of the document. As I add pictures, they want to go to the right, but if there's no space, then it automatically wraps it underneath. Okay? So that's kind of the flow of HTML. Even up here, if we look at the text, the elements flow left to right, but if there's no space, then it goes underneath and makes a new line, right? So that's common in HTML, the reflow of the document. Now headings are special. Notice headings, they don't allow you to have anything to the right of them. So it forces everything to be underneath. So each heading is always going to be on its own new line, right? And nothing will be next to it. That's by design, because normally when you have a heading of a document, you don't have text immediately starting to the right. The text normally starts underneath it. Okay. So again, this is basic HTML, and we'll just do one more quick element. Well, it's actually a few different elements, but one thing we might want to do for this Mr. Mittens page is create a list of favorite foods or something like that. All right. So to do this, first let's go ahead and make our h2 tag and say this is going to be favorite, if I can type, foods, and then slash h2. And here we're going to have, there's a couple different types of lists. All right, we can have an ordered list, right? That's an OL tag. And then for each item in the ordered list, so I like to make the opening tag and then make the closing tag so I don't forget. Right, so we have an ordered list tag, and the content is in between. So I'm going to make list items. So this list item technically does not need to have a closing tag, but again, as I told you, I'm in the habit of always closing my tags. It might be OCD, I'm not sure, but it's actually a common thing. Most places where I've worked, people tend to close all the tags, even though technically, according to the specification, you don't have to. All right, so I'm going to close the LI tag as well, even though you don't have to. And in here, I'm going to put one of the favorite foods of the cat. Right, so the cat, let's see, it likes fish first, right, and then the next thing it likes is birds. And then it also likes squirrels. Right? So now we have HTML tags whose content contains more HTML tags. So in this case, OL is considered the parent tag, and these are the children. Right? So the parent of this LI tag is this OL tag. The OL tag has 3 children. This LI tag is a sibling of this LI tag, right? Because they share a parent. Right? So this tree structure, this ordered structuring of the document is important. It comes up a lot in HTML. So the entirety of this HTML element is all of this, including its children. This is the HTML element for this OL tag. Alright, and so if we save this and run it, and we see we have favorite foods and fish, birds, and squirrels. Right? And it's ordered 1, 2, and 3. So we can change the way it's ordered. We can add a type, and we can say we want that in letters. Right? I can refresh this, and now instead of 1, 2, 3, we have A, B, C. I can say we want the type to be lowercase letters, ABC. We can have Roman numerals, 1, 2, and 3. We can have lowercase Roman numerals, right? Okay, so you can, this ordered list allows you to have any type of numbering sequence. Well, not any type, but there are some options. Now this gets into what are all the options. All these different tags have different options and different attributes that you can add. Remember, the attribute is inside the open tag, right? You put a space after the tag name, then you have an attribute name, then an equal sign, and then the attribute value. And remember to put quotes around the attribute value. So it's common to want to look up all the different things you can add to a potential tag. So the internet is your friend. So OL tag options or attributes. Okay, and commonly what will come up is W3 Schools. This is a good site to look for HTML attributes. Right? There'll be a number of different things that come up. Mozilla is a good one, and so is W3 Schools. So this shows you basically everything we've talked about so far. You can also change, where it starts. You can start it at number 50, for example. And as we scroll down here, it shows you all of the options. These are all the different options for the type attribute. Start specifies a number. What number would you like the list to start at? Right? So that's the ordered list, and we'll do another list real quick. For the last one, this will be H3/H3. So commonly, like I said, I like to make the opening tag and the end tag, and this is other foods. And then we'll make an unordered list, UL. And we'll add list items in here as well. So cat food, dry cat food /li. And again, it isn't necessary to have this closing tag. Li does not require a closing tag, but I use it anyway. And Li wet cat food. Alright, so we save this file, go back to our cat page, and you see other just has dots. These are bullets, right? And again, we can look up the UL tag attributes, and chances are good this is going to come up with W3 Schools, and you can look at the OL tag attributes. So you can change what kind of bullet it is. So the default the default is a circle, right? So apparently this is not supported in HTML5 anymore. So you would do that with CSS, which we'll get into in a little bit. But this is the important aspect. Programming languages change, they evolve, they grow, and you constantly you might forget what the attributes are or how something works, so you need to know where the documentation is for it. But also new features are added, and so you need to know where the documentation is to learn about the new features. So using the web and having several different resources to aid you when you're working with HTML or any programming language is very important. Make sure you read the documentation and learn about the tags you're using, and learn about all the possible things that they can do. Okay, so that's enough for our first segment on HTML.